for this week's video about living as exiled loves the place you want to leave, where you were tasked to pick 6 sentences and tell you what we felt was significant and where they came from, like the context. And so for my first sentence, I did the sentence that says, "We live where we live ultimately because God has sent us here, at least for today, and the providential hand of God never moves without purpose." This sentence came from or at least the context was from the section where it says planted by my master gardener, which is after Jeremiah's 29:4, where God's discussing how God's hand works at the Israel exile to Babylon. And I feel like this sentence is pretty significant and at least can relate to us as people, as because it shows you a perspective on kind of because it says where we live ultimately is because God sent us here, and basically it shows that what's happened, God's working even if we can't see it, and it helps you to understand that we're living where we are because he sent us here for a reason. And I feel like it just shows that we sometimes you're put in a place where you don't feel at home, but it's the reason you're there is it's God has a purpose for it, and it'll either teach you a lesson or it'll help you grow, and it's just something that I feel like is pretty significant and is shown from that sentence. The next one that I chose is, "What if we too saw our present places as gardens, as a garden and a palace, not because the soil feels rich or the furniture looks elegant, but because our Father, the gardener, has planted us here, and Christ, our King, dwells here." So I feel like this one's pretty significant because it shows it just really shows that Christ, his presence can transform any location into a palace, no matter what it is. You can have say for a personal example, for me, I live in an apartment and I can make my apartment my palace if I just if I choose to make it that way. It will become my palace because that's how I am choosing to I'm transforming it, but also God's will transform it for me and make that place my safe place or my palace. And then my third sentence: "Sink your roots into this soil, hard as it may feel, and dare to believe that fruit can grow even here." The context of this one, where it comes from this part where it's souls with packed boxes, that section. And I feel like this really just shows that it requires it says sinking your roots, it means really just kind of grabbing in and really having the desire to fulfill something and make something just really just make it yours, and you have to latch on to create something basically. And with for instance, it could be with a relationship or kind of anything, is school, whatever you put yourself into, you're putting your roots into that. And I feel that it shows a lot. And then my fourth sentence is, "Might our desires for everywhere else become a self-fulfilling prophecy, a spade that continually digs up the ground and keeps us from gripping the soil here." And this one came from the souls with packed boxes section, where it's talking about constantly wanting to leave and prevent us from finding home where we are. Basically I feel this sentence really shows significance in the way that the first part where it says, "Might our desires for somewhere else become self-fulfilling." You may have a desire to go somewhere else, or be just continually thinking oh, I'm gonna be happy when I get there, or this and that, but that's not always the case. If you're just thinking you're just think, well, as soon as I get there everything's gonna change, that's not how it always works. And that, like, when you think of it like that, like, you have to realize that, like, it might not be like the place as the issue. It might be like you as a person. Like, there's something, like, not wrong, but there's an issue, and it's not necessarily the place, basically. um but that was sentence 4, and then moving on to my sentence 5. Wherever we live, there are people in our block, in our neighborhood, and throughout our cities who need to hear how much God has done for us and how much He might do for them. This sentence came from this section "Stay and Make Discipline" section. And I feel like for this one, like, this sentence, it really is kind of about, like, just like sharing, like, your experience with God, who you're around, who you're, like, surrounding yourself with, and how, like, you can, like, share your own testimony, kind of, like, and how, like, God's impacted your life, and you can share that with them, and, like, it can help them to, like, also, like, make that realization, or, like, just, like, start to, like, connect more with God. Like, for example, as a team, like our soccer team, we had, like, a Bible study where some of our teammates shared their testimonies, and, like, I feel like that really just, like, it helps, like, others on the team, like, just really, like, connect in a different way, because, like, you're hearing other stories that aren't just, like, yours, and, like, I feel like that's an important thing to do. And then for my last and final sentence, I picked the one that says, every morning we wake up in a house we don't like. We can't remember the room in God's house with our name written on the door. So this sentence comes from Exile Till Heaven section, and I feel like it's significant because it really shows that, like, it could just, like, you can imagine, like, that, like, there is, like, because it says God's house with our names written on the door. It's, like, it's showing that, like, God has a place for you. Like, He has a room, like, a room for you somewhere, a door with your name on it. Like, it's just really, like, I feel like it's it makes you, like, you can, like, imagine it. It's, like, just, I feel like, pretty influential in that way. But yeah. And then for the final question of whether I agree with the author's main point from the reading, I feel like the main point was, like, God's people always live, like, exile, and, like, they're basically, like, waiting for a forever home with God. And honestly, like, I feel like I do agree with this, because I feel like a lot of people that, like, at least have a belief, or, like, somewhat in God, like, like, they're like, not, like, longing to go to heaven, but they, like, they know there's a place for them, and, like, it, like, I feel like it just gives us a perspective and stuff, and, like, even when life is good, like, we might not fully be satisfied, but, like, we know in the end, like, there is a place for us. But yeah, thanks.